1 in 4 Canadians plan to purchase an investment property before 2028. Hello, my name is Joe Kehoe, here to help you out and educate you on all your residential and commercial real estate needs in Bay of Quinte, Prince Edward regions, and beyond. Thank you for joining me for another video. This week's video is going to be dissecting the LePage annual investor report. So this is a report LePage puts out once a year. They survey a bunch of Canadians nationwide and get data on who is investing in residential real estate. So this has nothing to do with commercial. This is residential real estate only. Let's dive into this report. The big headline here is more than 1 in 4 Canadians plan to purchase an investment property in the next 5 years. So it states 51% of current investors and 23% of non-investors are considering, keyword here, buying an investment property before 2028. So this survey highlights approximately 4.4 million Canadians currently own an investment property. That's a big number. 4.4 million Canadians own an investment property. 26% of Canadians say they're likely to buy an investment property within the next 5 years. That is the 1 in 4 number we're getting here. 1/3 of Canadian real estate investors, 32%, own 2 or more properties. Younger investors, aged 18 to 34, are more likely to own more than 1 investment property compared to their older counterparts. We'll get into that later. Nearly 15% of Canadian residential investors do not own their primary residence. The majority, whom are aged 18 to 34. Nearly 1/3 of Canada, 31%, have considered selling 1 or more of their investment properties due to higher lending rates. So if you have a variable rate mortgage on your investment property, maybe that investment's not doing so well right now as far as cash flow goes anyways. 20% of investors are in Greater Montreal area, say they're likely to sell 1 or more investment properties within the next 2 years. This percentage rises to 24% and 28% in the greater regions of Toronto and Vancouver. So after seeing this headline and all these subheadings of this investor report, there's some key takeaways here. New investors, younger investors, they're getting very savvy, right? They're acquiring multiple properties. Maybe they don't even own their own primary residence and they're investing in real estate because they think it's such a good idea for setting themselves up for the future. So maybe they still live at home and they've saved up money and they've bought a duplex. Maybe they're living with friends, renting a room out, and they're buying an investment property and paying that down, and that's going to enable them to buy something else in the future. Another thing to touch on is a lot of investors in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, almost 1/4 of them are considering selling their investment property in the next 2 years due to higher lending rates. So in these markets, we see a lot of pre-construction, we see a lot of buying something 5 years out from completion date. And although you've made good equity then, rates aren't what you think. So something that you thought you were going to break even, or maybe you'd be negative $200 a month, now you're negative cash flow $1,000 a month, and you're really bleeding on that. That's $12,000 a year just to hold this condo that you think is going to appreciate. So I think that's why we're seeing a higher number of investors in those markets looking to sell one of their investment properties. According to the LePage survey, 11% of Canadians, that's the 4.4 million people figure, currently invest in residential real estate. 64% of those having 1 property, 32% of those owning 2 or more. Despite higher borrowing costs in today's post-pandemic real estate environment, aspiration to own property for the purpose of investment still remains strong. Canadians want to invest in real estate. As I mentioned before, young Canadians more inclined than ever to invest. As we know, many young Canadians are struggling to get into the housing market, but they are actually the most likely to have more than 1 residential property compared to their older counterparts. So they're getting more savvy and thrifty and realize that you can build generational wealth through real estate. Location, amenities, and property type are still valued among investors. Of course, location in real estate, right? Single-family detached homes are most popular, with 44% of investors owning that type of homes. Condos come in second at 37%, and townhomes in at third at 11%. 15% of residential investors do not actually own their primary residence. 12% of these investors rent, while the other 3% live rent-free with friends and family. Investor finances amid global economic uncertainty. They mentioned the increased borrowing cost has significant impact on those with variable rate mortgages, which is leading to some of them being inclined to sell. This would mostly be probably first-time investors and people who didn't realize that, rates can go up and your cash flow disappears very quickly. So investors aged 18 to 34 are the most likely to weigh the decision of selling at least one of their investment properties. So an interesting takeaway, two things I took away from here. One, that a lot of investors are actually investing out of where they live. So let's take an example of how this strategy works for someone or why someone would want to do it. Someone's living in Toronto. They have dreams of owning a property in Toronto, but they can't get into the housing market. So they're going to invest in somewhere like Belleville, and they're going to buy a single family home for $500,000. They're going to rent that out. They're going to collect rent, build equity, pay down their mortgage, wait for that property to appreciate, and then maybe they buy another one and they have two properties and they're still renting in Toronto. Then they sell these two properties and they can afford a detached home in Toronto. They want to stay in Toronto, and that's what gets them into home ownership. So people are being creative as far as different avenues to build wealth through real estate, to get to the end goal of home ownership in the city where you live. In another sense, people are realizing, yes, I know my market, but there's other markets where maybe investments can appreciate quicker, cash flows better, maybe there's vacation rental opportunities. So investments just across the nation and even in other countries are becoming more prevalent. Another takeaway is that a high percentage of probably first-time investors, or at least young investors, are thinking of selling one or more of their investment properties. Most of these people probably have variable rate mortgages, and they've realized that times were good when rates were 2% and you were cash flowing your condo, but now that your variable rate mortgage is 6+% and you're losing $1,000 a month on your condo, times aren't so great, and banking on all that appreciation is not a really sound investment strategy. So those are my two main takeaways. I will link this investor report down below along with my website, which has all my contact information. If you have any questions about that or investments in our local market, I'd be happy to speak with you. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next week.